One of my favorite shows from a couple of years ago was the HBO series 6 Feet Under. It was a poignant and sometimes irreverent look at a family that lived in and owned a mortuary. In one of the scenes from the show, the family was sitting down to a Christmas dinner. Guests commented on the scents of freshly cooked turkey, ice chinked softly in glasses, and small talk permeated the atmosphere as everyone took their seats. It was a special occasion as one of the characters was, if I can recall, introducing his significant other to the family. The mother, who was acting as the host, asked if someone would say grace. One of the guests offered to do so, and those gathered bowed their heads. In front of an elaborate and impressive spread of delicacies, this is the prayer that was offered. Lord, for food in a world where many walk in hunger, for faith in a world where many walk in fear, and for friends in a world where many walk alone, we give thanks. Amen. Now, I am sure that the writers of the show did not intend for the prayer to be analyzed too carefully. I imagine that it was meant more to set an atmosphere than anything else, and it may be too heavy-handed to invest any serious thought to it. But it got my mind wondering, as my mind is wont to do. It got me thinking about gratitude and how it is that we come to be grateful. It made me ask the question, is gratitude built upon comparisons? Am I actually grateful for the blessings of my life, or am I simply grateful because I can compare myself to others who have less to be grateful for? For example, am I grateful for my food because there are those who do not have food? Or for my friends because there are those who are alone in the world? It's actually a pretty troubling thought when you start to pick it apart. Now, it's true that much of our lives are built upon comparisons. Your neighbor just bought a new slick black Mercedes that makes a gentle purring sound every time she starts the engine, while you have a 1980 Ford Pinto. Your friend at school has a new PlayStation that her parents seemed to buy on a whim, while you had to wait 6 months until your next birthday to be given a hand-me-down Atari with a broken start button. Your boss is showing pictures of his 3-week vacation to swim with the dolphins in Fiji, while you are quietly deleting photos of your mediocre visit to the pumpkin patch in Brentwood. When we come out on the unfavorable side, comparisons are often a cause for envy or annoyance, maybe even animosity. One psychologist appropriately called this compare and despair. So what about what happens when we come out on the favorable side? What about when we have the better thing and we look upon others who are less well off? A friend of mine tells this story. Back in the first grade, he and his classmates would earn little red plastic dots for good behavior and good grades. At the end of every week, they could buy something with the dots that they had earned. After several weeks of saving his dots, he strode confidently to the front of the classroom. A hush fell over the room as he methodically counted out his dots to buy the most expensive item, which was a used VHS tape of football bloopers. He laughs at recalling this story. He didn't even like football or particularly want to watch the video. He simply wanted to have the video. It was a minor victory, and he was the hero of the story, taking home this coveted prize. And that is the problem, I think. When we are caught up in the dramas of being less than or more than, we become the center of the story. We need more so that we don't feel less than, so that we can catch up with our fellows. Or we feel victorious or smug or satisfied at having more than some other person. Whether the comparison is favorable or unfavorable, the whole world comes to revolve around us when we are stuck in this mode. We are hero or victim, and either way, we are at the center of the story. It's a bland, self-absorbed way of being in the world, I think. The good news is that life offers disruptions to these tendencies to get trapped in our own story. The philosopher Elaine Scarry puts it this way: the surfaces of the world are uneven, and that's a good thing. You come around a bend in the road, and the world suddenly falls open. You continue around another bend, and you go back to your conversation until you are once again interrupted by the high bank of radiant meadow grass rising steeply beside the road. The same can happen when you move through a sea of faces at the railroad station or rush down the aisle of a crowded lecture hall. The beauty of the world disrupts a story that is otherwise centered around you. This quotation suggests that radiant beauty, the kind that gives us pause, can be found anywhere. It relies on nothing and it requires nothing from us. It certainly does not depend on another person having or not having it. It is simply the case that the world is constantly and awesomely unfolding itself to us in breathtaking and beautiful ways, if we care to notice. Elaine Scarry offers another example. She writes, "You may be sweeping the garden bricks at home, attending with full scrutiny to each square inch of their mauve, orange, blue surfaces. Then suddenly a tiny mauve, orange, blue triangle with a silver sheen lifts off from the sand between the bricks where it had been sleepily camouflaged until the air currents disturbed it." She continues, "The tiny moth flutters in the air, then settles back down on the brick, demure, closed-winged, a triangle no bigger than your pinky nail. Why should this tiny fragment of flying brick color stop your heart?" This can be an ethically important thing, this beauty that stops our hearts. When we come to more deeply appreciate the radiance that is all around us, we have more difficulty seeing it pulled apart and trampled upon. We may wish to save the tulip garden at the park down the street because we delight in our own tulip garden, or we may wish to prevent childhood hunger by appreciating the amazing growing capacities of our own children. We may wish to conserve a certain endangered animal because of the splendor it's given is unlike any other, or we may wish to learn and pass along an idea because of its exquisite precision. This experience of the world turning itself open to us in its smallest radiant fragments pulls us to preserve that beauty. That is, of course, its own kind of challenge. But a life without such beauty is a far worse misfortune, I'm afraid. It leaves us feeling aching and empty. The Sufi poet Rumi once wrote of this emptiness. There is a candle in your heart ready to be kindled. There is a void in your soul ready to be filled. You feel it, don't you? Far too often we contribute to that void within ourselves. We exchange what is radiant and beautiful for something that is cheap or beside the point, such as how we compare with our neighbor. Gratitude by comparison doesn't get us closer to life's grandeur. It lures us closer to a sort of private emptiness. Thank goodness life's blessings are far grander and more ubiquitous than our ability to do comparisons. The way creation comes alive with beauty is without limit, I think. It is almost as if such beauty pursues us. As Rumi put it elsewhere, what you seek is seeking you. In other words, this thing that we call the spirit of life is constantly turning open the world for us to see and appreciate it anew. Beauty can flood our experience at any moment, and it requires no self-comparisons in order to be experienced. It simply requires us to notice it, to appreciate it, and to extend our gratitude for it. My question for you this Thanksgiving season is this: how can you give yourself over to these gifts of life, to this radiant beauty that stops your hearts? My spiritual companions, Spirit is waiting there. Amen and amen.